joined by ESPN NFL analyst Dan Orlovsky, whose appearances on One Bills Live are presented by Caesars Sportsbook, an official mobile sports betting partner of the Buffalo Bills. And Dan, another slow start for this team in the early going against the Titans last week, but then they shifted it into gear to the tune of 34 unanswered points. We even saw a little under-center play action, Dan, something we've been talking about for over a year, and my goodness, it worked. Unbelievable.
What is this, 1995?
That's right.
Yeah, I agree. The slow start, it's funny, Chris. That was one of the first notes, was slow start, and I think it was a little bit attributed to, again, some of the tight coverage misses. I don't want to call them misses because they weren't missed throws, but just lack of connection and tight coverage. A couple balls that were essentially one-on-one that are just, an inch or so out of the reach of the receiver or tight end. And then you sit there and say, well, can you create a little bit more separation so the throw doesn't have to be as cautious? But yeah, then they got into a little bit of a rhythm. I thought, the thing that you started to see that was nice was, Dalton started to get going in the second quarter with some of his different routes. And I like when they give Kincaid, the outside receiver space, and he can be a little bit unique with his releases. We saw some of the short ends on that. I think they need to do more of that. We saw him when he's in the slot be an outbreaker, so that was really nice. It was nice to see Keon play with physical strength, and just a little bit of physical reaction. The big play down the field on Josh's, I guess, kind of scramble. That was just Keon's physical strength showing up and just instinct. So that was really good. I think you saw, obviously, the addition of Coop have an impact down in the red zone, and even some one-on-one throws that Josh trusted him backside on a fade route that he just kind of threw it to a spot, and Coop used his body language to control it. So, they once that second quarter started to get going, they did a really nice job. And then the under center play action to Coop I thought was good. I've talked about this with you guys, though. I like it. I do. I want them to do more out of it, though. I still believe they really only do one pass concept out of that, where they'll take the slot, they kind of sit him over the ball. He can break away versus coverage, and then the outside guys maybe got a deep 18-yard hook or whatnot. I want them to do more pass concepts out of it.
What is one of the reasons, too, because this is something the team has struggled with Josh at quarterback for a long time. They're getting a ton more yards after catch. I mean, Keon had a couple of plays like that. Shakir has been very good doing that. Kincaid as well. They seem to be catching the ball and getting yards after the catch, where that used to be a real struggle for this squad. Are they doing something different that you can see, or what do you attribute to that?
Well, I think it's number one, teams that, again, structurally play them a little bit differently than they did maybe, in the years past, over the past couple of seasons. So there's a little bit more space underneath. There's more air underneath for them to get the ball and then get yards after the catch. I do think that it's some of the broken play stuff where Josh can, he kind of puts defenders in conflict when he gets outside the pocket of, do you go after Josh or do you hang back in coverage? Shakir, and that's one of the things, Steve, that I'd say, like, right now, after the addition to with Coop, you sit there and go, the defense has got to kind of adhere to every part of the field now. There has to be a defensive. You have to respect vertically now because Coop can still go deep, and then you have to now really respect horizontally at the same time because there is so much space underneath for a Shakir. There is so much space underneath for a Kincaid, and so I think that we've talked about all the different pieces, and again, the sum is greater than the individual parts. But now that you've got vertical speed player, defenses have to respect all of that space at the same time now, and I do think that's going to prove to be very valuable for this football team.
Yeah, Josh with 258 passing yards in the second half. That's the most he's ever put up in a second half, which was kind of surprising to see. You tweeted about an hour ago that, the three quarterbacks playing the best football in your mind, Lamar, Jared Goff, and Josh. Is there anything that you deem to be a new element to Josh's game that has you putting him up that high?
Not really.
Okay.
I think it's pretty clear that
same
I've
old,
always
same
been
old.
a relatively massive fan of Josh's. He's obviously valuing the ball at a really high level. I've always felt that he did. I think he lived on a line and kind of, made some decisions that were, I guess, interesting, but sometimes the situations I felt okay about it. So I do think he's valuing the ball a little bit more. He's playing a little bit more controlled now. He did have that 2 week stretch this season where I thought he played frustrated and fed up. And I guess Chris, the answer to that would be, after the first quarter, he didn't, which was nice. The first
Yeah.
quarter was slow, and he didn't get off track. And so, I think that's a good sign, compared to what he did for that 2 week stretch, a couple weeks ago.
All right, so let me follow that up really quick, because one issue that has been a persistent problem for the offense is third down conversion rate. This is a team that has led the league in that category each of the last 2 years. Right now, they're 25th. There's only 2 games where they converted better than 33% of their third down opportunities. Last week, even with all that point production, they're 3 of 10. Josh, after the game, cited first and second down efficiency as a problem for third down, which I do believe is a contributing factor. He also is completing only 49% of his passes on third down. That is tied for the lowest in the league with Trevor Lawrence. I realize that's not only a Josh number. I mean, we saw drops last week on third down. So what do you think the bugaboo is for the third down conversion rate of this team being such a persistent trouble spot?
People. Third down in the NFL is about people. You have to have people that can go beat certain coverages. It's third down. The NFL is the main difference between the NFL and college football is the NFL is a very game plan specific league. And then within that, you don't spend a ton of time on first and second down offensively or defensively. You do a little bit wrinkle, but that's your base stuff. You get into third down and red zone situations, and that's when coaches really spend their time studying and trying to figure the opponent out, where you can attack or how you can minimize. And the third down situation is about, do you have guys? Do you have guys that can beat high-end defenses or really elevate defenses or elevated defenses? And we'll see what it looks like over the next couple of weeks with the addition of Coop, because I do think that will help. He's going to be a person that you'll start a lot of your stuff with, and then you'll build off of it to a Kincaid, or you build off of it to a Shakir. And so I want to see how those numbers, last week, game 1, he's been there for 4 or 5 days. I want to see how that third down success changes now that they've got a true kind of number 1-ish. I still believe he's a number 1 receiver. And so I think third down has probably been a little bit lacking this year, because you don't really have somebody that the defense believes we've got to stop that person.
So you got a little taste of Amari Cooper in the Bills offense. What is your, what do you think? I mean, all of a sudden you got Keon Coleman getting 125 yards and all these, all this stuff happening. So what do you think? How much is his presence? How much is just happenstance because it was the Tennessee Titans? What kind of change can people expect to see in this Bills offense that they have not seen through 6 games?
Yeah, I think number 1, you have a person you could put by himself. And, you saw that. You guys just showed the clip of the fade ball, equally as good as the slant he runs, where they put him by himself and he widens his release on the slant route and he's patient and Josh throws it to him, and that's 10 yards right there. So I think you can, this is an offense that loves to get in some of these outnumbered formations as well, where they get into like their 4-by-1 stuff. And I think they've been trying to figure out who could be that one. The one. And the reason why that formation matters so much, and Steve, this is like when you put that person out there, number 1, you gather information by who's defending that person. So you take Coop and you put him out there, and you've got the corner out there. Then your eyes immediately as the quarterback go to the safety. Okay, is the safety going to help? Because if the safety helps, then we have an advantage numbers away. Whether we're running the football there, or we're going to get a completion pass concept that way, or it's RPO that way. Okay, if the safety's not helping, do you have a person that can actually take advantage of those one-on-ones? And I would say that right so far this year, they haven't had that person. Well, I believe there's good players. They haven't. And so I think that's a formation that Joe Brady will get really creative with, whether they line up in it or they'll motion to it. And having Coop there, I think, is going to be really important. And then I think that the different ways you can, just close your eyes and imagine situationally where it's Coop and Shakir on the same side, and then it's Coop and Kincaid on the same side, or it's a Coop and a Keon on the same side, and then a Shakir and Kincaid on opposite. Yeah, at some point, your defense, you've got to figure out how you want to handle all that. So I do believe he's a chess piece that they can move around for information and matchups.
All right, so let's apply that to the game coming up on Sunday out in Seattle. Two really good outside corners, Witherspoon and Woolen. I don't know. I don't know what to make of Seattle's defense because they're last in the NFL in first down defense. I mean, they're giving up almost 7 yards on first down, and yet,
Yes.
and they've given up the fifth most plays of 20 yards or more. Like, are these big play opportunities going to be legit against this defense?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say this. Number one, the secondary has not played up to one, the expectation, or two, what they had in the past. All across the board, it hasn't. They've been susceptible to explosive plays. Now, the reason why, mainly, their defensive front has not impacted the quarterback at all. I would say the team that has done it the least on tape maybe is the Cardinals more than them, and the Cardinals are devastated with injury, and the Seahawks have dealt with injury as well. So, this is a game, Chris, where I would sit there and say, you got to be very aggressive on first down in a way of, I've talked about a little bit when you play a team like the Minnesota Vikings defensively, you want to be aggressive on first downs because you don't want to get the third down against them. That's kind of what you saw with the Lions. I don't want to experience third down. This game is, I want to be aggressive on first down because I don't think you can stop us. Like I want to try and jump on first down, and that would be the one complaint I have with the Falcons' plan when they played Seattle last week. The Falcons played into their hands. I would be very aggressive throwing the ball downfield. I would live in a ton of play action. I don't think this front can get after Josh on a consistent basis nearly enough on those downs where they can minimize the big plays downfield. So I think it's a very aggressive start for the Bills if it was me.
Yeah, and it does lend itself to being a little bit faster if you can complete those passes and make the play action work. The other side of the coin is always if this front is not as good at getting after the passer, what about how good are they against the run game? Or can you just control the game more conservatively than that?
Yeah, I think you can control the game in the pass game, though. I do. I don't, with the way that Josh moves in the pocket, the way that the offensive line plays. I think you want to throw the football on this team defensively early on. You certainly are going to run the football at moments, and they want to stop the run with 2 high safeties. But, I think that's what the Falcons tried to do a little bit last week, Steve. And they kind of played into the hands of the Seahawks. This has been a story for the season as they've just been giving up big plays for teams that have been aggressive, pushing the ball. And I'm not saying 60-yard bombs. I'm saying 15, 20-yard chunks. And so, I think this is a game where you put the ball in the quarterback's hands early.
And then just flipping it around, it looks like it's a strength on strength. The Seahawks receiving core against 2 pretty darn good corners outside, and Taryn obviously in the slot. I know Metcalf, if he plays, is probably not going to be 100% coming off the MCL sprain last week. But Steve was talking about the Bills being good in yards after catch, 12th in the league. The Seahawks are number 2 in the league in yards after the catch. I mean, they have almost 1,000 already through 7 games. So what is the concern there? I mean, obviously we see Metcalf as a deep threat, but is he with an MCL sprain? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the severity of the sprain. Obviously, he's a tremendous player. I think the challenge for Buffalo this week defensively is they're going to see so many different formations. Ryan Groove, who's come over as the play caller for the Seahawks, was at the University of Washington. If anybody paid attention to college football last year, and they're going to throw so many unorthodox formations at them. Meaning, they'll put formation in the boundary. They'll take 3 or 4 guys and stack him into the boundary, and they'll take DK and cut his split to the field, and so he's got all that room to go work. And they're huge on shrinking their splits down to the football. So they're going to create leverage on those corners to try to create some free access. And so it's going to be really important for them to communicate. They're going to have to play and space a little bit differently defensively. And yeah, it's a really good pass game. Geno Smith is tremendous. You know, he's one of the best in the pocket maneuvering quarterbacks that we have in the NFL. Very, very aggressive with the ball. And, you know, versus zone defenses, he tends to pick them apart. He does. So I think this is going to be a big time challenge for that second level of their defense. You know, Taron Johnson and Bernard, and then really the safeties to make sure that when those cut splits are happening, there's a high level of communication of kind of where your help is and where the vacancies are.
One of the things we've been talking about on the show today is the success Greg Rousseau and A.J. Epinesa have had, and also Dwayne Smoot and also Dwayne Carter. The Bills have gotten a lot of production out of their upfront guys. I just saw a stat online where Greg Rousseau is in a tie with a bunch of guys at second in the league for quick pressures. He has gotten home really quick. Now, it hasn't translated into sacks, but how much success do the Bills really need to have up front? You said Geno's really good in the pocket. I don't think he's the kind of quarterback where you're worried about him snapping off a 25-yard run like some of the other guys the Bills have seen, but you still got to get to him and grab him before you're going to get him on the ground. I mean, how much of a factor is this going to be? You know, can the Bills pass rush have a day against these guys?
It'll be huge, you know, and you're right. He's not the guy that is at least multiple times a game going to go break your back with the run. He's got it in his bag to be able to do it, but it's not necessarily what he kind of escapes to. He's just so good at maneuvering the pocket. And I think that'll be the big challenge for their rush unit is you don't, you know, with guys, sometimes you're like, you don't want to give a guy a seam. That's a Josh type of player, right? You don't want to give him a seam. Almost with Geno, like you don't want to give him a spot to get to. You know, if you rush hard off his outside, yet you keep him in the pocket, well, you've created a spot where he can move up into. You don't even, because he's really good at it and he can throw it, man. You know, Bills fans, this is not the Geno Smith from the Jets days, I promise you. So I think it's really important that they just almost we call it, Steve, don't give him much operational space, you know, in that pocket where, you know, there's a little bit of that phone booth area where you can move. So it's going to be almost like how you would rush a Lamar in a way where like you want to restrict the pocket on him, not because of the worry of getting outside, just because you don't want him to have those places where he can go operate in.
Dan, thanks as always for the time. We appreciate it. We'll catch up with you next week.
See you, man.
Thanks, guys.